I've won, I guess, the last little bit of a birthday job that I wanted to do, and I wanted to do a critical thought discussing my personal favorite designs when it comes to video games. So we're going beyond just a simple game idea, simple story, but what mechanics and systems I want to see more developers explore, maybe someday I'll just have to make it myself. As many of you know, I really don't play a lot of video games here on this channel, but there have been a few of the years that have stood out to me in terms of just really getting stuck in my mind, and I wanted to see like more developers do something with them in some way, shape, or form. And we're going to start off with the, I guess, Defender like base defense major. We don't really have a name for it, but you all know what game I'm talking about, and that is They Are Billions. They Are Billions is one of those like white whale games I've been trying to beat over the years, and I've yet to manage to accomplish that. Because I let one little zombie through, I input one tower in front of that one gate. But the reason why I love They Are Billions for its design is that it is the only time where I felt that a base building or a base holdout mission really felt dynamic and interesting. This is thanks to the randomized maps, the fact that you never know where the hordes are going to come from, and that it's a constant kind of, I guess, like rebuilding and improvisation that goes on each play. You can't just build the same builder every single time. You can't just place a tower here and a tower there and call it a day. You need to figure out where are the choke points, where are they going to be able to get in, where are the major resources on the map, and then build and adjust accordingly. There's a mix, or there's this struggle between aggression and turtling that you have to learn, and it feels different to any other RTS, base builder, whatever that has come out over the years. The closest game I would say that has kind of followed in this suit would maybe be something like Against the Storm, but that is going for more of a roguelike economic city builder rather than a base defense. Now, where They Are Billions could stand to improve, it is certainly not the most balanced game. So many of the things you can build or research just don't really matter when it comes to survival or the campaign. I would personally, the thing that would like make things so much better would be better wave predictors for when enemies are coming. That may make things a little bit too easy for some, but I think it would be a great like approachability option, something you could turn off for higher difficulties. Now, the game has been out for several years now, and people have been clamoring for a sequel, an expansion, a DLC, just something that is more billions. And developers have gone very quiet over the years. And I really, really hope that they decide to make a sequel because there's so much more they could explore, so many ways to improve upon things. We did try out Age of Darkness, and while that went for more of a, almost like a Warcraft 3 style with like having a hero unit, it didn't feel as, I guess, interesting to play as They Are Billions. It's a really great example also of very snappy UI UX that you can immediately see when you place a build down what's the radius. There's this ability to quickly build out or quickly hunker down if you're good, and people have been making modded maps and so on for years with some just crazily masochistic designs out there, which I will probably never be able to touch or let alone beat. But definitely one of my favorites, and like I said, maybe when this video goes up, they'll announce a They Are Billions too, and if that is the case, then you are welcome, everyone. We're going in the complete opposite direction for the next pick, and one of my all-time favorite genres, of course, is action. We have played the Ninja Gaidens, the God of Wars, Bayonetta's, God of War again, and Sekiro, Souls-likes, and all that. But there's one particular style of action design that we have not seen more of, and it's been a complete travesty. And that is the ability to kind of customize how you attack, or God Hand. I loved God Hand, and like many people, I still hold somewhat of a grudge against IGN for giving it such a poor review. What makes God Hand work so well is that it allows the player to not only be rewarded with mastery, but lets them build how they want Gene to work. Do you go for a lot of heavy attacks? Do you focus all your up attacks as being very fast moves? Do you just rely on the standard counters and defense moves, or do you put some into your routine? I would love to see someone like embellish this further. Maybe even going as far as creating like an action RPG action fighter game where you can find different, loots and rarities of punch. You can get the 3-star punch, the 7-star punch that causes the guy to get caught on fire, and if he hits another enemy, the enemy explodes and causes shrapnel damage. And your kicks could, I don't know, freeze people or do shocking. The ability to kind of take this even further, it's kind of going to walk a very weird line between a third-person action game and something along the lines of a full-on spectacle action. So that would be the Devil May Cry's, Bayonettas, and that level. And I do feel there is room for this kind of middle ground, because it kind of is going to be in this like weird like triangle position between the like third-person action games we get today, the spectacle action games up here, and then the more like slower, deliberate Souls-like designs over there. And again, one of my all-time favorites, and while we may never get the same amount of humor as we did in that one, the design, I think, is still worthy of being looked at further. And maybe like a game that came somewhat close, at least in terms of elevating action design, would be something like Fight and Rage, but it doesn't have that same level of customization that I'm looking for. 2 parts ago, I mentioned a game like There Are Billions that has tons of mods and so on. So for my next pick, this is the game that has had plenty of mods, but 2 that have become some of my favorites if I ever can get the time to play them would be the XCOM Files and X-Pirates. What I love about both of them, besides being a reimagining and a rebalancing of the original XCOM, is that it does something that I feel more turn-based strategy games should do. And that is provide very meaningful and very varied progression as you play through them. When you play through X-Pirates, you are never going to see everything in a single run. Most of us will probably never even see a one route, considering how long that game is. But what they do really well, and it's something that I felt was missing from the Firaxis' take on XCOM, is that it provides a almost like choose your own adventure style of progression. The issue that I have with Firaxis' take is that it felt too much ingrained with like board game or tabletop design. You know there's always going to be a terror mission, I think after like the first month or the second month. You know there's only going to be one mission. You have to decide between you want this one or this one or this one. There's not this sense that you're able to really like stretch your legs out and do all kinds of things with it. With X-Pirates and with XCOM Files, they both force you to adapt and grow. It's a far slower power curve in both compared to the original XCOM and to Firaxis' take. In XCOM Files, you are going to be stuck with just a 2-person sedan until you upgrade to the whopping 4-person van. And maybe you can get a 8-person helicopter that is the hand-me-down from the army at some point. But there's a sense that every new thing you get, it matters. Going from using basic boomsticks and literal sticks in X-Pirates to getting your first major armor upgrade, to getting your first major pistol, and then having a variety of means of exploring. I am really shocked that more turn-based strategy games have not even tried the whole, branching and locked tech tree elements of something like X-Pirates, where you have to decide which upgrade you want, how to respond, and the game will grow and change accordingly. And again, there's no right or wrong answer to it. We may never see the end, or the end of development of XCOM Pirates, and we may never see the end of X-Pirates, considering how slow it's taking me to play through it here on stream. But I love this, because I wanted to see turn-based strategy games that don't rely on just having paper-thin characters. That's one of the things I don't like about both Firaxis and the original XCOM, even to some extent Phoenix Point. That I don't want to play a game where, oh, that character got that one shot that only had 10% chance, crit kills your character and there's nothing you can do about it. I want characters who can at least take a punch, or a shot, or a grenade, or a Molotov. And I would love to even go further than that, and even look at more, I guess, like contemporary or modern ways of doing turn-based design. As many of you know, I'm a huge fan of the Mario plus Rabbids series, for how it kind of reinvents the tactical strategy concept, but making it more dynamic and even more like action elements to it. And one of like 3 dream ideas I have involves making a turn-based strategy along those lines. Not quite XCOM, but something all its own. So, who knows? Maybe, again, by the time this video goes up, they'll announce XCOM 3 on top of They Are Billions 2. And maybe they'll announce Silksong at the same time and just completely give us the triple whammy there. Another very baffling decision is that we haven't seen more games that have gone with the kind of boss versus the player design of perhaps the most famous example, Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter in a way reminds me of an evolution of something like Shadow of the Colossus, although my memory is failing me because I don't remember which one came first. But what I want is to see more games explore this concept of the player engaging with a singular or very powerful enemy. And it's not in the same way, again, as an action game or God of War, Bayonetta, and all that, but being able to manipulate the environment and use it against them. That it's as much about beating up the enemy as understanding what is the best way to distract them, take them down, etc. While I don't think anyone will ever compete with like the sheer weapon variety that goes with the Monster Hunter series, but with something like Eternal Strands that has really like rekindled this thought in my mind, along with rekindling the entire forest a few times, I want to see a game really explore the idea of making a major enemy all-encompassing, that it should be as dynamic and interesting just to fight one enemy as it would in a traditional action where you're fighting dozens or hundreds of enemies all across a level. Another dream idea of mine is to combine like Monster Hunter with a horror game, where you're tracking down monsters in an area where it's about using traps and planning rather than just running around shooting everything that moves, or just staying in one spot and hunkering down. And we have seen some attempts at doing this. There was, of course, Dauntless that sadly I think has died, but it is another concept that I'm surprised we haven't seen more developers go with, especially with a lot of creativity in the indie scene. Because I know there are some fantastic artists out there who can make some just crazily disturbing creatures, and I'm sure there could be something there combined with the Monster Hunter formula. My next one is kind of a cheat because we've seen plenty of these examples already, but they are of movement and technical focus platforming. So games where it's all about combining different movement tech, jump tech, walk tech, slide tech, and just basically turning the world into a very engaging obstacle course. Some good examples of this would be stuff like Demon Turf and Pseudo Regalia, which is great that we have 2 examples, but I always want more of these. Where a lot of developers who try to do this end up failing in my book is that they make the space incredibly wide and very linear. Yes, you can do all this crazy movement tech, but there's only one way to climb a building, or one way to get through a level. And it's still one area where I feel like Nintendo still is the king of. When we talk about designing a space that feels like a playground to run, jump, slide, double jump, wall, slide, jump, slide, run all through. And I feel like we are definitely getting more of these, as I said, the aforementioned games. And it's a great time to kind of explore this idea of doing more with the movement and the level design. Because while 2D platforming is great and is another bread and butter of mine, it still is limited by that perspective in terms of just how much you can really let the player go crazy with different movement tech without the level getting in the way. But then, of course, if you go too wide, you go to the aforementioned problems I said a second ago. And I hope we see more developers explore interesting and different movement tech, when it comes to 2D and 3D movement. We played through that game, I think it was like Webs or Spider, the one with the dancing spider a few years ago that I thought was really well done. But always the problem when it comes to having unique and original movement tech is that it can be very difficult to make the level design work along it. Either it feels too restrictive, or just turns into a lot of like open-ended challenges where you don't really get a chance to really, I guess, like test your skills at understanding this mastery. And for the final pick, it should be one that should come to no surprise. That is roguelike or run-based design, from the deck builder to the action roguelikes to the roguelites to, again, the aforementioned city building roguelikes, just all the roguing and liking that one can imagine. I've said this before, but like my word of the decade for 2010s was just basically saying variants over and over again about how much I enjoyed the replayability that roguelike elements and random and procedural generation can instill. Now for this one, it's kind of easy because we're getting tons and tons of these examples day in and day out, year in and year out. We of course had Balatro last year. I'm sure we'll have some crazy over-the-top roguelike for 2025. And there's not much really to say here, because again, I could go into a whole design rant about good and bad roguelike design. Everyone should just buy randomized copies of my design dive book on them as well. And the reason why I love roguelike design, besides the replayability, is that it creates, again, this improvisation when it comes to playing these games. So you can't just rely on the same things happening the same way every single time. You have to adapt. You have to roll with the good and the bad and whatever weird artifact or perk you get on this run. And the very best examples really can go on to just keep growing or keep providing reasons to come back to and play. As a kind of in a way what I mentioned with the XCOM examples from earlier. And again, there really isn't too much more to say about this because I'm sure I'm going to be playing at least another 20 to 40 different roguelikes or some theme of roguelike or roguelite throughout 2025. For everyone of you watching, what are some of your favorite game designs or systems that you'd like to see more developers do? Or maybe you have your own dream concept that you want to develop or see someone else develop. Let me know down in the comments. Have a great rest of your day, and I want to get back to daydreaming about game design after this video is over. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.